Think we should be good here. Yes. Cool. All right. So, let's spend a little bit of time here today. I want to talk about some of the roster moves going around here in college basketball, and today we're going to focus in on the ACC. And then as time goes on, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on right now in college basketball, and I don't think it's being covered necessarily to the extent that I think it could be. So I'm going to try to fill that void here at Talking Ball. And we're going to start today with looking at some of the roster changes in the ACC. I'm going to try to do all the Power 5 conferences. I'm going to look at individual schools. We may do some days where we're just taking a look at one school to go a little bit deeper into each school. And certainly as we get closer to next season, we'll have some previews with all the roster changes, schedules, predictions, rotation, etc. So the first team I want to talk about for the ACC here is Louisville, because I think it's important. We got to start with the three best teams from the ACC last year. And that was Duke, Clemson, and Louisville. And I think Louisville has had one of the best off seasons of just any team in college basketball. So I think this is a great place to start. So they had, let me check my notes here. They had, let's see, four or five guys graduate. Five guys who were, four guys in Terrence Edwards, Rain Smith, Chucky Hepburn, Noah Waterman. Waterman wasn't really a starter. He started when Rain Smith was out. But at the start of the season, Rain Smith was coming off the bench. However you slice it, those four guys were really important for Louisville last season. And then they also lost James Scott, which is a big deal. He just announced today he's going to be transferring to Ole Miss. And so they really needed some replacements to come in, and they got that. They did a hell of a job bringing in guards. They brought in Isaac McNeely from Virginia, who us ACC fans are very familiar with the game of Isaac McNeely. Tremendous shooter. Can shoot. The thing about McNeely that makes him special is that he's not just a catch and shoot guy. He's a catch on the move guy. He can turn and face the rim and get a shot off. He's really talented with his ability to shoot the ball. They also got Ryan Conwell, who is a really good scoring guard, combo guard, 6'4", and then Adrian Woolley, who had some really impressive numbers with Kent State. Going up a level of competition, we'll see how he does, but he's just a freshman, so he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. So you get those three guys to replace the three guards you lost, right? So you lose Hepburn, Edwards, and Rain Smith. You get McNeely, Conwell, Woolley. But they weren't done, because their freshmen that they're bringing in, especially they only have two as of right now. They only have two freshmen coming in. But Mikel Brown is a top 10 guy, an explosive guard, and Sananda Frew is very interesting international big. I think that's part of the reason why you look at James Scott leaving, and I think he saw kind of the writing on the wall, if you will. So I think they've had a really good offseason, and I expect Louisville to be back at the top of the ACC come next season. Now, Clemson. Clemson's had a very interesting offseason. We're looking at guys like, okay, this is a good example. Jane Zachary is technically out of eligibility, but because of the potential at the end of this year where there's the NCAA ruling where they could allow players a fifth year of eligibility, so he's in the transfer portal. I think the same thing goes for Miles Foster, but they lost a lot of guys from last season. You have to start at the top with four starters. Chase Hunter, Ian Shefflin, who's now going to be playing football at Clemson, Victor Lakin, and Jaden Zachary. So you got 4 starters, plus Chauncey Wiggins, Dell Jones, Jake Heidbreeder, Asa Thomas, and Christian Reeves. All were, in and out of the rotation, especially as we got down on that list. But guys who played for Clemson last year, they're all gone. Coming back, there's not much. The only guy who was a key contributor last year for Clemson that's coming back next season is Dylan Hunter. And I got to say, I think this is a good time to bring it up. It was a big loss not to have Dylan Hunter in the NCAA tournament game against McNeese State because Clemson wasn't a deep team last year, and they really could have used Dylan Hunter. Not saying it would have changed the outcome, but I think it was one of the reasons why they really struggled in that game. I mean, they had a horrible first half. But Clemson has brought in a lot of guys, a lot of transfers. They've brought in 6 transfers. You're looking at Nick Davidson, Carter Welling, Jake Whalen, guys with size, and then a couple of guards in Efren Johnson and Justin Porter. And then they brought back R.J. Godfrey, which is it's been one of my favorite things about the freedom of movement with the transfer portal. You've got guys who have who've started a school, gone to another school, gone back. You look at Amici Johnson. You've got R.J. Godfrey. You've got Conrad Martinez as recent examples of this. So it just allows you to, maybe I was wrong. I got to come back. You got to revisit the old girlfriend, if you will, the ex, right? So there's been a little bit of that. And then they've got 4 freshmen coming in. Zach Foster, Chase Thompson, Trent Steinor, and Blake Davidson. Don't know much about the freshmen. Once we get a little bit further on, we'll do a little bit more research there. So the next team for me is going to be Duke. And Duke has had a little bit of an interesting offseason. You're looking at a team that, they haven't lost really anybody in the transfer portal. Now, does that mean they haven't lost anybody? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, technically, Stanley Borden entered the transfer portal, but he was really a practice player for Duke. They lost 8 guys from last year, 6 guys who were rotation guys, but 2 other guys who were key locker room guys, and Spencer Hubbard and Neil Begovich. Sion James and Mason Gillis graduated. And then Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg, Kama Malawach, and Tyrese Proctor, they all entered the draft. So in the transfer portal, Duke has added Cedric Coward, and just today, Ifeanyi Ofuchukwu, who is, I think, going to be more of a practice player as a 6'11", 240-pound big man. But Coward is legit. He's a real deal wing who's going to be really beneficial for the Blue Devils. They've also brought back Caleb Foster, Malik Brown, Patrick Gangba, Darren Harris, Isaiah Evans, and Cameron Sheffield. And 5 of those 6 guys were in and out of the rotation. 4 of those 6 guys, I should say. Due to either injury or coaching decisions. So a few of those guys are going to have much bigger roles this coming season. So we're going to have to see how they adjust to that. And then Duke now only has 3 freshmen coming in. That's going to be Cameron Boozer, Caden Boozer, and Nicholas Hamenia. And I think it's a good class for Duke. I don't think it's as strong as they were last year. But I think the 3 teams, the 3 highest teams in the conference, if I had to rate them, I'd say Louisville, I think they're still ascending. I think Clemson has definitely lost a step with the roster they brought in. And I think Duke is probably slightly below where they were last year with the talent they had on the roster. Now, a couple of teams I want to pick out here before we sign off. So I think Miami has had a really interesting offseason. They had to start from scratch. Nobody is coming back for this Miami team from last year. And I thought Coach Lucas did a good job of getting in guys who have real high major experience. You're talking about Malik Renault, Trey Donaldson, Ernest Ude Jr. in particular. Those three transfers are guys who they've been there. And I think that's going to be really important for Coach Lucas as he attempts to establish, what he wants this program to be. He also brought in a good defensive guard in True Washington, and then 3 freshmen, Dante Allen, Timotej Malovich, and Shelton Henderson, the former Duke commit that Jay Lucas initially recruited to Duke and now is following him to Miami. That's a big get for Coach Lucas and the Hurricanes. He is a top 25 recruit, not a guy who is going to be going to Miami unless Coach Lucas took that role. So it's a huge, huge get for Miami. They're going to be much more competitive this upcoming season. Now, a team that I'm a little bit worried about here in terms of I'm not sure, the direction that this program is going in is Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh, they lost a lot from last year, and last year did not end well. It did not end well for Pittsburgh. I mean, look, they lost Ishmael Leggett, Damian Dunn, and Zach Austin, 3 key contributors, 2 starters, and Damian Dunn, who started a few games but was a really important player. Part of the reason they struggled down the stretch, he got hurt again. It's tough. And then you lose Jalen Lowe, your best player, to the transfer portal. That's just that's a tough blow for the Panthers. They also lost the Diaz-Graham twins, who played important roles for various, not to the same degree, but they played important roles for them. And then guys off the bench like Amadou Kante, Delelich, and Marlon Barnes. They're just depth guys. But you're bringing back Brandon Cummings, who did show some big flashes, in Cam Corrin. And as far as I could tell, that's really it in terms of guys who played. They brought in 4 transfers, 2 guys from Iowa State in Deshaun Jackson, in Nojus, in Drusitis, and then DeMarco Minor and Barry Dunning Jr., and then a couple of freshmen so far in Omari Witherspoon and Kieran Mullen. And I thought this Pittsburgh program going into last season I thought Coach Capel had kind of steadied the ship there. It took them a little bit. They made the NCAA tournament. I thought they were in a good spot. And getting back the guys they brought back last year, they started the year strong. I think they were 12-2 to start the season, and then they ended up losing the first game of the ACC tournament. They weren't close. There was a while they were, it was pretty clear in the ACC. You had Duke, Clemson, and Louisville once you got to about February, certainly. And then there's a bunch of other teams who were fighting to be on the bubble. And Pittsburgh was one of those teams who probably in late December, early January, they're probably 80% in for the tournament. And as time went on, they kept losing games. And it's concerning for that program, which used to be a really strong program. And Coach Capel, former Duke guy, just the amount of talent that they lost, and I don't think they've done a good job of replacing it. So I'm a little bit concerned for them heading into this upcoming season. One quick note before I sign off here. They did announce that the ACC is going to be changing the schedule for next season. So they're going to only have 18 conference games, and there will only be so you'll play 2 teams twice. And from what I read on Duke's account, there might be a team you do not play, which is interesting. But I don't know. I may have read that wrong. But that is going to allow for, so instead of 20 conference games, there will now be 18 conference games moving forward. And that will allow these teams to schedule a little bit more difficultly in the non-conference play, something that's come back to bite the ACC once they've gotten to tournament time, and these teams aren't rated as well with the metrics. Sometimes you might be able to finagle your way into the tournament. No names, North Carolina. But I think it's a good thing for the conference. And I think overall, a lot of these teams look better. We'll cover more teams tomorrow. We'll talk about some of the teams we didn't get to today, but just want to get started here. We're going to try to do this almost daily, I would say, covering the roster movement in college basketball. And yeah, let me see if I can get the chat to work here. For some reason, it is not working. There may not be anybody in the chat, but let's take a look before we sign off here. All right, yeah. So, all right, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow.